Welcome, Bronco Nation, to my 3 keys to the game for Boise State versus San Diego State. As you can see, back in my traditional studio space, the black mold problem, which was keeping me out of this, has been resolved. However, I'm going to try and keep this close as I can to 15 minutes because the AC has not been put back in yet, so I am sweating. But hopefully this is the end of the long-term problems that we've been having with this issue. Another group of fans that are hoping that this is the end of their long-term issues is Boise State right now, because Boise State has just recently fired Tim Plow and ascended Dirk Koetter to offensive coordinator position, and is a coaching staff that themselves are feeling the heat right now, obviously trying to kind of point the blame there towards Tim Plow, and hopefully, obviously you don't want to have to say that it was just one person's fault, and I don't think it was. I think there's a lot of other things going on with this program, but hopefully for Boise State fans, for the future of Boise State football, this does solve some things. We're going to talk about that in this video. We're going to talk about Boise State versus San Diego State, talk about both these key teams. We're going to talk about series history, key players for both these programs, keys to the game, and a prediction on how this matchup is going to go for Boise State in this game. So first off, let's look at the timing. It's September 30th, Friday on FS1, 6 p.m. Mountain Central Time. Boise State coming into this 2-2 versus San Diego State 2-2, a home game for Boise State. Of course, Boise State not effective last season at defending the blue. Definitely a priority this year. Can they get it done? Already one win on the blue versus UT Martin. They're facing a San Diego State team that has losses against 2 Power 5 programs in Utah and Arizona. And they have wins against an FCS team in Idaho State and a win against Toledo. Now, this might come as a surprise to a lot of people. I know it was a surprise to me, especially considering the current state of affairs at Boise State. But Boise is actually favored quite heavily in this one. 75.7% chance of winning, according to ESPN's FPI. And Vegas is giving them a spread of 6. So Boise State's favored by 6 points in this game. Series history between these two teams. Boise State and San Diego State have played 7 times. San Diego State earning a slight edge in that matchup, 3-4. The game series started in 2011, Boise State winning that first one handily. Of course, Kellen Moore's last season at Boise State, 52-35, great win there to start off the series. But then San Diego State won the next 2 games. Boise State would come up and win the next 2 games after that in the series, and then San Diego State winning the last 2 games in the series there to pull ahead by 1 win last season, 2021, 16-27 win. So if you're looking purely at the pattern here, Boise State's due for a win. 1 win by Boise State, then 2 wins by San Diego State, then 2 wins by Boise, then 2 wins by San Diego State. It's time for that 1 win by Boise State. Let's talk about whether or not that's going to happen here. Key players of the game that will make a difference for both these teams in getting that win. First off, quarterback Taylen Greene. Hank Bachmeier was reported that over the weekend that he was going to be leaving. That has now been confirmed. BJ Rain's first reporting that he was going to be leaving, and then Ron Count's confirming today that that is a certainty, that he has submitted his paperwork to transfer out of Boise State. So now it's Taylen Greene. And, regardless of the decision here with Hank Bachmeier leaving, I think Taylen Greene was going to get the start in this one either way. I think that's what prompted Hank Bachmeier to leave in the first place. I know during the bowl game freshman year for Hank Bachmeier 2019, the reason that Jalen Henderson wasn't started, despite the quarterback that took them to the Mountain West Championship game and the second half of the season had a very, very good year after Hank Bachmeier went down, the reason they didn't play Jalen Henderson with momentum was because there was concerns, this was reported, there was concerns that if they did, Hank Bachmeier would have transferred out. So there was concerns that if Hank Bachmeier didn't get started in that one, he's going to transfer out. Well, this game, Hank Bachmeier not getting the start coming into it. I think that was pretty much already going to be the case, and he's gone. He's going to go find another home here, and I wish him all the best of luck. I really think, I talked about it. You can look the link in the description in my reaction to the Tim Plow leaving and Hank Bachmeier leaving and the future of the Boise State season. I did a whole video. I won't talk much about it, but I do wish Hank Bachmeier the very best going forward. I really do think that he had a lot of potential that was never realized here at Boise State. But next man up, Taylen Greene, a freshman for Boise State, second year at Boise State, but a freshman here in playing time for Boise State, making his first start. He does have some playing experience. In 19-28 versus Oregon State, of course, coming in when Hank Bachmeier struggled in the first quarter. 19-28 versus Oregon State, 155 yards passing. 1 interception, but he was very effective on the ground, where he ran for 102 yards, including a 70-plus yard touchdown, and he had 2 touchdowns overall on the ground in that game. So another player that's going to be key for Boise State here is going to be George Holani, of course, the star running back for Boise State. He has been the guy consistently over the last few years, has been Boise State's #1 go-to running back, though he has struggled with injuries. He's healthy this year. He already has a 100-yard game under his belt. Can he take some pressure off of the freshman quarterback Taylen Greene in this matchup? 261 yards rushing on the season, only averaging 3.6 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. Like I said, he has a 100-plus yard game, but only 1 in 4 games. He's only gone over 100 yards once, so he really needs to have a good game in this one to go up against a San Diego State defense that's not necessarily the best defense in the country. We'll talk about that later. They are a decent defense, but there might be some opportunities here in the run game, especially considering Taylen Greene's lack of proficiency in the passing game so far this season. What we've seen out of him, the run game is going to be a huge emphasis on him for Boise State. Hopefully George Holland can have a big game. And the last guy is going to be a defensive player, George Tarless, the Greek freak, transfer in from Weber State. He's had a little bit of an interesting start here for Boise State. He's looked really good. He's put pressure on the quarterback. He's definitely played with a lot of energy. But at the same time, he hasn't been able to get to the quarterback consistently. Last week, he missed a bunch of tackles. The whole team missed a bunch of tackles. So it wasn't just on George Tarless, but he was a guy that was able to get to the quarterback or to the running back a couple times and not able to bring him down. It was noticeable because it would have been a huge loss if he'd been able to make those tackles. He has to be able to do that in this game. He's 4th on the team in tackles, and he's the leader in sacks, but only 2 sacks. So that kind of tells you the story of Boise State's inability to really put consistent pressure on the quarterback this season. Only 8 sacks overall for the team, 2 of those by George Tarless. I think he's shown a lot of potential. I've been excited to see him play so far this season. I think he is a guy who can make a major difference for this defense, and I think he needs to make a step up in this one. All right, let's look at San Diego State. First off for them is going to be Braxton Burmeister. Now, a senior quarterback here, a transfer over from Virginia Tech, so he's got a lot of experience coming from a Power 5 program, but he has not played well so far at San Diego State. 34 of 64, 230 yards. So in 4 games, only 230 yards passing, 53.1% completion percentage. He has been very effective on the ground, though, a little bit like Jalen Henderson has been. 28 rushes for 149 yards, 5.3 average, and a touchdown on the ground. So Braxton Burmeister, Boise State secondary, has been weak. And there's some opportunities there. Maybe he can take advantage of that. Otherwise, the ground game is going to be a heavy focus here for San Diego State. Their running game has averaged their running game has over 800 yards rushing this season. 5.8 yard average per carry. 6 running backs have 7 or more carries, and 4 of them have 80-plus yards or more rushing for San Diego State. So they have a whole depth here of running backs that has been the focus of this offense this season. So San Diego State's definitely going to try and test Boise State's run defense, which has been pretty good, but looked a little bit iffy last week. Well, not just a little bit iffy, gave up almost 200 yards on the ground against UTEP. So Boise State's defensive line is going to have to step up in this one to stop the running game. Don't have a key player for the running game for San Diego State because it's just a bunch of guys that get the ball, but they're going to have a great depth to pull from in this game against Boise State. And then the last key player here for San Diego State, and probably one of their most consistent, is going to be their kicker, Jack Browning, 4-4, 2+ 40-yard field goals and a long of 50. He's also their punter. On 27 punts, he's averaging 43.7 yards per punt and a long of 59. So that's going to be your key players for this game. Let's look at the keys to the game. And again, I'm trying to get through this quickly because it is hot in here. All right, so number 1 key is take the points. This is going to be a defensive slugfest. You've got a brand new offensive coordinator. From talking to the players, it doesn't sound like the offense is going to change very much. It is a short week. I mean, Tim Plow gone, Dirk Koetter instated on Sunday. So, you've got a game on Friday here. There's not even a full week to prep for this matchup against San Diego State with a brand new offensive coordinator and a completely new look here for at quarterback. So Andy Avalos has been focusing on a run-heavy attack for Boise State, or that's been the focus here for Boise State offensively. Again, unclear whether or not that was Tim Plow's vision or Andy Avalos' vision. Either way, it should be the offense that Boise State is primarily going to be running in this one, because like we said, there's not going to be major changes, and that offense has not done well, and now you throw into the mix a brand new offense coordinator trying to figure out the ropes. Guys, a lot of experience, done this position before, but brand new this season, or at this position for Boise State, and then a true freshman at quarterback. It's going to be difficult to necessarily go down there and finish drives. Boise State needs to take their shoe full of points when they can, reminiscent to that 2019 Florida State game, keep themselves in the game with the field goals until the offense hopefully clicks later in the game, and Boise State can finish this one out with a win. Second key here is work the pass in slowly. Greene's legs are his best weapon. We saw that against Oregon State. The passing game doesn't look like it's his strength right now, but that could have just been the situation that he was thrown into. I mean, Boise State was kind of forced into a place by the time he came in that they were already having to go for points. They're having to go for yards. They're having to get the deep throws down the field. The short passing game was covered up pretty well, and his wide receivers have had difficulty getting open all season, but he was kind of forced to throw the ball deep. So maybe Boise State can work in some short passing game. Maybe Taylen Greene is a much better passer than what we're seeing so far this season. And that would be great because he is a very athletic quarterback. His legs are no question. The only thing I question right now is his passing arm. If the passing arm turns out to be a great benefit for him, something that he can use as effectively, he's going to be a great quarterback here for Boise State. And I do believe that he's going to be Boise State's future. I do believe that once he is developed, that the raw talent, if you look up raw talent in the dictionary, you've got Taylen Greene's face right there. So I do believe that he is going, I've said do believe like 4 times, I've got to figure out a different word. But I do think that he is going to be a great quarterback here for Boise State, but he has to be developed. He's very raw, he's very inexperienced, and he doesn't seem to have the awareness right now or the touch in the passing game. So if Boise State can give him some confidence, use his legs, get him into the field of the game, take a couple light hits, get him into the momentum of the offense, and get some first downs, get him feeling like he's not just out there by himself, using the running backs and allowing Taylen Greene to build some confidence before he starts popping the ball off or trying to throw it deep. Some nice short passes, easy completions, really work him slowly. Because Boise State, obviously you want to go out and win this game, but you also, 2 things, want to have a successful season, hopefully salvage this year and move forward to a successful season. And more importantly than that, you want to have a great season in 2023, because I think we're at a point right now, you have to make a major change in the offense a third of the way through the year. You've kind of already at that point accepted that this isn't going to be the best season for you. So I think it's in Boise State's best interest now to start building for 2023. So you don't want to make any major mistakes here with Taylen Greene that would shatter his confidence. Get him into the game slowly. If Boise State loses this one, but is able to then use that to build on and win more games down the road and then have a great 2023 season, that's going to be better than going for it all in this game, destroying Taylen Greene's confidence, not having him come into the next game shaken, and then it just spirals. So Boise State needs to take their young quarterback, let him work himself into the game. If it means Boise State doesn't win this one, but is able to then have a better season, that's going to be the greater of gain here for Boise State in the long run. And then, and overall, I just think it's going to be more effective in the offense because his legs are an effective weapon, and Boise State has had a tendency at times when they brought in a mobile quarterback to stop using their legs quite as much as they did when they were backup. But I mean, that's a natural tendency, I think, as a team, as an offensive coordinator, as a coach, is you don't want to get your starting quarterback hurt. So once they become your starter, you start to protect them a little bit more. Boise State can't do that with Taylen Greene because if you take away his legs, you take away a big part of what makes him special here for Boise State. And then the third key here is send the blitz. Boise State secondary has been weak. Now, statistically, we're going to talk about this here in a second. They're one of the top secondaries in the nation. But that is because they've played UT Martin, FCS team, New Mexico, who is not a super pass-heavy attack, and then UTEP, who didn't need to throw the ball, was able to run it pretty much the whole game and find success. So I think Boise State's statistical performance is being created by the fact that the teams they've played haven't necessarily gone after them in the air, but Oregon State did, and they had a pretty good game. And there have been opportunities in the secondary that a team that was wanting to capitalize or able to capitalize on them could have done, and especially against UTEP, there were a lot of opportunities through the air. So Boise State's secondary is weak. Burmeister is vulnerable. Braxton Burmeister here is vulnerable. He is a quarterback that has made some mistakes already this year. And 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. He's made a lot of incompletions. Boise State should just run the blitz on this because they are not getting to the quarterback effectively. We talked about low sack numbers. Boise State's not getting to the quarterback effectively. The less time they can give the quarterback, the better, because the secondary is getting beat when given time. Even their better secondary players are getting beat. I mean, you saw Caleb Biggers get beat for a touchdown against UT Martin on a deep pass on 4th and long. So they're not getting the quarterback effectively with the normal rush. They're giving too much time in the secondary, and the secondary players are not strong enough this year to be able to lock down the receivers. And then you got the fact that San Diego State's probably going to run it. I mean, that is their thing. They're probably going to run it most of the time. Sending that blitz is only going to be more effective against stopping the run game. So if Boise State can get some sacks, if Boise State can stop that run game, if Boise State can flush and fluster Burmeister, they're going to be more effective here in the defense against a passing game that's already not going to be the most effective one in the world. The blitz, I think, is going to be a big impactor here for Boise State. Hopefully, off those sack numbers, build some momentum for this team that the offense can then capitalize on. So let's summarize this, okay? Take the points, work in the passing game slowly, and send the blitz. Let's look offensively and defensively comparisons between these two teams, because these are two teams that have struggled this year. Offensively, these are two of the worst teams in the nation statistically, and it really hurts to say that about Boise State, who has been one of the top, most explosive offensive teams in the country. To say that they're one of the worst offensive teams in the country really hurts. It's not something San Diego State's not really that used to not hearing. I mean, they hear that on quite a regular basis, and they're able to make up for their defense, but they are especially bad this year. So yards per game, San Diego State's actually worse than Boise State, 229 yards per game, which is good for 129th out of 131 teams. Boise State, 268.7 yards per game, 116th. Rushing yards per game, San Diego State a little bit better, 166.7, which is good for 51st, but when you consider that that's their entire offense, they should be better than that, only 166.7 yards per game on the ground. Boise State, like we mentioned last week, they're 96th overall, 119.3 yards per game on the ground. Passing game, this is where San Diego State falls off the map, 62.3 yards per game through the air. That's 130th overall. The only other team worse than them is UMass. Boise State, though, not much better. I mean, this is a Boise State team that had a quarterback in Hank Bachmeier who's not a runner. He's a pocket quarterback. They should be doing better through the passing game, but they have less than 150 yards passing, 149.3 yards per game passing, which is 118th overall. So this is definitely going to be two offenses that have already been struggling this year coming up against two defenses that are overall pretty good. Now, Boise State definitely statistically much higher than San Diego State. San Diego State yards per game is 411.7. Which is 77th overall. So kind of, back mid-tier, but not necessarily the worst. Boise State, though, 305 yards per game is good for 21st in the country. Rushing yards per game, San Diego State, a little bit better than they were on their overall yards, 157.7 yards per game, which is 70th overall. Boise State, top 52nd, 134 yards per game allowed on the ground. And that, I think, was they would have been much better, kind of skewed a little bit, if they hadn't given up almost 200 yards against UTEP last week. So overall this year, they've been very good on the ground. And then the final stat here, sorry, someone's calling me, going to just X out of that. And here, keep going, sorry. All right, almost done. Passing game here, Boise State 259. San Diego State giving 259 yards through the air. That's good for 83rd overall. So there's going to be some opportunities here for Boise State in the passing game. There's, like I said, 259 yards per game. There's going to be some opportunities for this new quarterback, this freshman quarterback in Taylen Greene, to go out there and maybe find some success and some confidence. Boise State, we talked about how statistically they're actually pretty good against the passing game. 171 yards per game, which is good for 11th in the country. But again, I think that is impacted by the teams they've played versus the actual quality of this team. And Burmeister, he is a quarterback who can get it done if he's given opportunities. Hopefully Boise State doesn't give him those opportunities in this game. So overall look here, you've got two teams that are both bad on the offensive line. You got two teams that are subpar in the receiving game so far this year. I mean, Boise State's got some great guys in the receiving game, but they haven't been able to get open consistently. Now, when you look at the differences between these two teams, San Diego State has the same offensive coordinator they started the year with. And they also have a large group of running backs that they can draw from and stay fresh throughout the game. And while he hasn't been great this year, he is experienced. They have an experienced quarterback here in Burmeister. I think Boise State losing Hank Bachmeier is really going to hurt them in this one, because this is not the game that you want to be throwing your freshman quarterback to the fire. I said this after the Oregon State game. I said, find out who your quarterback for the season is. If it's Hank Bachmeier, great. If it's Taylen Greene, great. Figure out who it is and go with that guy against New Mexico, because you have 3 games there, New Mexico, UT Martin, UTEP, lower tier teams, to work in some confidence, to figure out some chemistry between whoever the quarterback's going to be, to build them up so that when you come up against the rock wall of the Mountain West Conference schedule, San Diego State, Air Force, Fresno State, BYU, Colorado State, not necessarily all in that order, but tough teams that you got to then go up and play, maybe not Colorado State, but the rest of them tough teams that you have to go up and play, they're going to be ready for it. They're not going to be figuring things out against San Diego State. Well, that's exactly what is happening here. A huge shift, huge tectonic plate shifts here. Offensive coordinator gone, Hank Bachmeier gone. Now Taylen Greene, he doesn't have the benefit of those games. He barely played at all after Oregon State, which I think was a big mistake overall. I wasn't saying he should necessarily take over from Hank Bachmeier. I do think that Hank Bachmeier would have been the more effective starter this season if he'd been given some more time and maybe worked with Dirk Koetter to develop himself here. But that's, hearsay, and in the past. We're moving on. Regardless, Taylen Greene should have still been played. He should have still been played because he's the future of this team. You know, he's next year's quarterback, and he has a lot to contribute. So he should have still found a role, and he didn't really. I mean, they put him in on a couple of gimmick plays, basically, where he basically handed the ball off, and that was it. But he wasn't a part of this team. I thought he had maybe a Montel Cozart type of role where he could come in and be, you know, a 10-play guy where you can mix him in effectively. You run him a few times, maybe he throws a couple passes, stays in the momentum of the game, and he's ready to come in if Hank Bachmeier struggles again, or if something else happened. Well, something else happened, and now Taylen Greene is the quarterback coming up against San Diego State. This is a tough game to have to make your first start as a quarterback. Much tougher, certainly, than New Mexico, UT Martin, or UTEP would have been. Another big difference here overall is that San Diego State has 2 Power 5 losses. So they're the same record as Boise State, but 2 of those losses against Power 5 teams. They have an FCS win and a win against a lower G5 team. Boise State has a P5 loss against Oregon State, who's looking pretty good this year, but then they have a loss to a lower G5 school in UTEP, win against FCS and win against a lower tier team. So schedule-wise overall, San Diego State and Boise State's 2-2 are very different. I mean, you know, you can look at San Diego State's struggles so far this year, and they didn't play that much better against Toledo and Idaho State than they did against Arizona and Utah, but they still played Arizona and Utah. I mean, Utah is a top 15 team. Arizona looks like a much better team than they were last year. Definitely not the worst team in the Pac-12 or the worst team in the Power, or one of the worst teams in the Power 5 like they were last season. Definitely looking better this year. So this is a Utah team that's 2-2 and has some bad statistics, but that could be impacted partially by the teams they've played so far. This could be a team that's a little bit better than what they've shown on the field so far. So I think when you compare these two teams, the 2-2 by Boise State, especially considering that Boise State lost to UTEP. Again, we lost to UTEP. That is a terrible team. San Diego State is definitely better than UTEP. And now we have the chaos of having a brand new offensive coordinator on a short week and a freshman making his first start. I just don't see how Boise State wins this one. I know they're favored in it. I know that they've got a 70+% chance of winning. I know that they're favored by 6 points for some reason by Vegas, and the Vegas guys are smart, and they do a good job of most of the time of predicting these things because they do it for a living. But Boise State gave up 200 yards versus UTEP, and San Diego State is much better on the ground than UTEP was. And Hartson was 10 of 11 for 123 yards and a touchdown. He only missed one pass against Boise State. I mean, Burmeister could find some opportunities here against Boise State. So the secondary also already weak. The fact that San Diego State is a much better team against this than what Boise State faced against UTEP. Hopefully, last week was just kind of an overall letdown. Maybe Boise State was looking ahead to this one, and they're going to be better in this game. Hopefully, the Boise State defense that we've seen at the beginning of the year, as far as that line, is what we see coming into this one. But if Boise State defensively plays like they did against UTEP, this is going to be a loss for Boise State. You know, and offensively overall, it's just too much chaos for Boise State, I think, to overcome in this game. You know, if Boise State had all this happen even before the UTEP game, and now was coming into this game with a UTEP game under the belt of the new team, I'd have a lot of different things to say about this. But I just think it's going to be a really close game. I think it's going to probably be closer than I think maybe it should be. I think that Boise State will hang around in this game much better than they should. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to blame Tim Plow and say that he was the problem. But I think this offense overall is the problem. And the indications are that it's not changing. And again, whether or not that's Andy Avalos continuing to meddle with the offense, or whether that's just the fact that they don't have time to change it, Boise State's going to be coming out and basically running the same offense. Now, granted, with a quarterback that's a running quarterback, so he'll actually fit better into a run-heavy offense. But it's still the same offensive line. It's still wide receivers that haven't been able to get open, coming up against a secondary that's better than what they played against UTEP, and they couldn't get open against UTEP, and they struggled to get open against UT Martin, and a quarterback who hasn't shown that he's consistent in the passing game yet, and an offensive coordinator making his first game here, his first start as offensive coordinator for Boise State. First time since he was offensive coordinator for Atlanta in 21. So he's been offensive coordinator recently, but it's a big change to come in as an offensive analyst, and now you're the offensive coordinator making the calls. I think this is going to be close. I think Boise State is going to lose this one 27-21. I think that 21 is going to include a couple of field goals, maybe a 2-point conversion at some point, but I think Boise State ends up losing this one 27-21. But hopefully they can establish some pieces in this game. You know, in this game and this season overall, I'm not looking at win-loss record anymore. I'm looking at building for the future and building a style of play and a chemistry to building a what's the word I'm looking for here? To building a culture here at Boise State that will attract new players, will keep the players Boise State currently has on the team, and build to something better in 2023. I think Boise State can start to put some of those pieces in this game, and that will be a building stone to the next game. And even if Boise State loses that one, hopefully they can keep building and building and building until by the end of the year, they have a product that they can say, yeah, a lot of crazy things happened, but this is what we're bringing forward in 2023, and this is what we can promise you in 2023, and hopefully that's good enough to keep the players on board and to bring in new guys to keep building the program forward. So in this game, I'm not, at the end of the day, a win would be great, but I'm just looking to see Boise State show a little bit more consistency on offense to start picking up the shattered pieces and moving forward in this one, and that's what I'm hoping for this game for Boise State. So you can disagree with me, and I hope you do. I hope you comment and we have that discussion and we can talk about this game, because I think it could go both ways, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope Boise State comes in here, looks completely different. Taylen Greene is a star right off the bat. He looks like the future superstar NFL first-round draft pick from Boise State. He looks incredible. The running game suddenly sparks up and looks amazing. The wide receivers start getting open. The defense plays dominant. I hope all of those things happen, and I come into my review video saying, man, I was an idiot. This team was incredible. They shocked me. That's what I hope happens. But right now, kind of looking at this game analyst-wise, the fan side of me is rooting for that other scenario. Analyst side of me has presented to you what I think is going to happen in this game. Let it know. I want to hear the discussion. I want to hear your score predictions. I want to talk about this. So let me know in the comments, whether that's on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, however you're viewing this video. Let me know, and I'd love to discuss this with you more. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'll be reviewing the game, win or loss for Boise State, and I'll be doing another 3 keys to the game next week. Again, win or loss all season. I'm here for the long term. I'm here for the long haul for Boise State, no matter what. I always have been and always will be. Whether, like I said last week, whether Boise State's losing by 4 possessions or not, I'll be watching to the last second of every single game and then hopping on and talking about how Boise State can get better and what we can expect next game. So thanks so much for watching. Like, subscribe. As always, go Big Blue!